When you think about the first European to sail to India, one name probably pops into your head, right? Vasco da Gama. But what if I told you the story we all know is missing its very first and maybe its most fascinating chapter? Today, we are going to unpack the incredible journey of a man who saw India decades before the age of conquest even began.
Okay, so let's just get right to it. We all learned the date 1498 in school. That's the year Vasco da Gama arrives in India, kicking off a whole new era. But get this, nearly 80 years earlier, around 1421, an Italian merchant named Niccolò de Conti was already there. He was walking the streets, doing business in India's bustling port cities.
So that just begs the question, doesn't it? Who was this guy, and why has his incredible story been so overshadowed by the conquerors who came after him? That's what we're going to figure out.
Let's start by properly meeting this forgotten pioneer. He wasn't in command of some grand fleet, but his journey? Well, it would completely reshape how Europe saw the East.
All right, so his name is Niccolò de Conti. He was a merchant from Venice, which at the time was a huge maritime power. But he was way more than just a merchant. He was a traveler and a deeply curious observer. His account gives us one of the best windows into what India was actually like in the 15th century, before major European contact changed everything.
So you gotta ask, what kind of person just packs up and undertakes a journey like this? It turns out his background, and more importantly, his methods, were the real keys to his success. It's how he got access to a world very few Europeans had ever seen. I mean, just look at this timeline for a second. He leaves home in 1419 and doesn't set foot in Europe again until 1444. That's 25 years, a quarter of a century. Think about that. He spent a massive chunk of his life completely immersed in Asian cultures.
So how in the world did he pull it off? Well, this wasn't some military expedition. His secret weapon was basically cultural immersion. He learned Arabic and Persian fluently. These were the languages of trade and culture. He adopted local customs, local dress, and here's the crucial part. He traveled as a merchant. He was there to learn and to trade, not to dominate. And that approach, well, it paid off big time. It allowed him to travel deep into the Indian subcontinent, and it led him straight to the heart of one of the most powerful and magnificent empires on the planet at that time.
His travels took him to the incredible capital of the Vijayanagara Empire, near where you'd find Hampi today. And what he saw there, it was going to absolutely stun his European audience and pretty much challenge everything they thought they knew about the world.
To capture the sheer scale of this place, he used the only comparison that would even make sense to people back home. He reported, flat out, the city was larger than Rome. Now, you have to understand, at that time, Rome was the center of their world, the ultimate benchmark for greatness. So this wasn't just a description, it was a mind-blowing statement about the power and sophistication he was witnessing.
And he backed it up with tons of detail. He described these massive fortifications, markets that were literally overflowing with gold and jewels, a king who was fantastically wealthy, and a government that ran things with incredible efficiency. He even made a point to note the general prosperity of ordinary people. This was no myth. It was a real, thriving, highly organized civilization.
But, Conti's observations went so much deeper than just buildings and wealth. He was just as fascinated by the people, their customs, and their different beliefs. He was basically an ethnographer before the term even existed. He was paying close attention to everything: social structures, marriage customs, how things were made. But it's his fascination with language that really gives you a sense of his unique perspective. And this leads to my favorite detail from his entire account. He noted that the Telugu language, which was spoken in the Vijayanagara kingdom, sounded beautiful to him, a lot like his native Italian, because so many of the words ended in vowels. Calling it the Italian of the East is such a personal, respectful observation. It shows you he was really listening.
He also documented the incredible religious diversity he saw. He saw major faiths like Hinduism, Islam, and Jainism all coexisting. But he also stumbled upon something that would have been a pretty big surprise to most people back in Europe.
Over on the East Coast, near modern-day Chennai, he visited a community of Indian Christians who lived around the tomb of St. Thomas the Apostle. His account gave Europe first-hand confirmation of this ancient Christian tradition in India, a story that stretched all the way back to the beginnings of the faith itself.
As he made his way along the famous Malabar Coast, hitting ports like Calicut, he got to see the engine of the world economy at work. He described this cosmopolitan hub where traders from Africa, the Middle East, and all over Asia were exchanging spices and goods. The takeaway was crystal clear. At this point in history, the center of global trade wasn't Europe, it was India.
Okay, so after 25 years away from home, how did this incredible story even survive? And what was its ultimate impact on history?
Well, his return to Italy is a wild story in itself. At some point during his travels, probably for his own safety, he had been forced to renounce Christianity. So when he gets back, he seeks forgiveness from the Pope, and his penance is pretty unusual. Pope Eugenius IV basically commands him, narrate your entire journey. And lucky for us, the papal secretary, a scholar named Poggio Braccioli, wrote it all down. And just like that, one man's adventure became one of Europe's most important sources on Asia.
So this is where we get to the heart of it, the real difference between his journey and what came later. You had Conti, the observer. He traveled to learn, he adopted local ways, and he described what he saw with genuine respect. Then you have the conquerors who followed. They arrived to dominate, to impose their rule, and often they wrote with a lot of exaggeration to justify their actions.
And that's really why his account is so vital today. It's this precious, unfiltered snapshot of India before the colonial era really began. He gave Europeans a real, detailed look at the subcontinent's powerful inland kingdoms, and he shifted the entire view of India from some land of myth and fantasy to a very real place full of complex, advanced civilizations.
And that kind of leaves us with a final, pretty big thought. Niccolò de Conti's journey represents a totally different kind of encounter, one that's based on curiosity and commerce. It really makes you wonder, right? How might the whole course of history have been different if that relationship had started with more observers and fewer conquerors?